Dr. Farooq, distinguished colleagues. It's always an honor and a pleasure to have the opportunity to interact with colleagues from across the country. We have heard two very interesting perspectives. I want to take somewhat of a more philosophical perspective, but I will share some data also. What I'm going to be presenting is based on two sources. One is a steady and extensive project undertaken by EFMD and ACSB a few years back. I think it was 2016 or 17, where they held a jam which involved people from all over the world to look at the future of business education. And there's a book published, which I think you can access from EFMD website. I think it's available in soft copy format. Anyway, so that's, can we go back to the first slide, please? मैं जब क्यों करूं तो please तब करें, don't. And the second is I did some work again a few years back looking at 20 plus institutions across the country to see how they are connected with the industry and community. And what mechanism do they have in place and what does the industry think. So I'm combining these two, and then I've been around I think too long, so I have some ideas of my own, and given what Dr. Fahim mentioned and what was mentioned by Naqib, I'll have somewhat of a different perspective on what they have said. So I'll share that with you just to liven up the thing so that we could have a good discussion later on. Gee, next, let's see if this works. So, is this the first slide? एक मिनट. अगर आप मेरी क्यूज पे करें ना, go to the first, वापस जाएं. First slide, next slide, और जब मैं कहूँ तो next slide जी, because this doesn't work. Next slide, एक slide आ. एक fundamental issue है, I think which we have already seen. Dr. Fahim thinks business schools are doing a great job, and we heard the perception of the industry. By the way, this is an international phenomenon. There was a study done, I think globally, which indicated that 90% of the higher education institutions, which include business schools, the faculty think that they're doing a great job in terms of meeting the needs of the industry, 90%. When the same question was put to the industry, less than 40%, I think 33 or 34% people said that their needs are being met. So there is this gap. I think we have to accept that. Now the question is, what is causing that gap? So their perception is different. I don't know about the reality because usually things work on perceptions. And there are three reasons for each of the schools. This is based on the work that was done by this group at EFMD. And they have distinguished the schools in terms of elite schools, mid-tier, and third tier. And the idea here is that there is serious resistance to change in each one of these three types of institutions. The elite schools think that everything is working great, we are getting students, there's no reason to change. So they are stuck with the way they have been doing things. And I would say institutions like LUMP and IBA probably fall in that category, that they'll change, but they'll only change peripheral. The basics are more or less the same. There's resistance because there's no need, or they feel there's no motivation. Then we have mid-tier institutions. They have the need to change, but sometimes they don't have the resources, and they are constrained by the fact that they have to somehow align with the top-tier institutions, so they are stuck in that sense. The third-tier institutions, interestingly, are the ones which are more open to innovation and have tried to introduce all sorts of programs because they are looking for students. But the problem there is that they are offering new programs with the old model. So they'll take the material which is available and they repackage it in terms of new programs, and then we have another problem. And I think this is from their study, but when I look at Pakistan, we have the same situation. So a school that's looking for more students will start proliferating the programs. But if you look at the content, it's basically repackaging. The pedagogy and the content is not too different. So we have problems across the three levels. So they claim in this study done by EFMD that we need to go back to the three famous R's, which have been always talked about in higher education. One is the relevance. How relevant are we? And the first thing is the faculty. How relevant is the faculty? Does the faculty have the orientation, the motivation, and the background to engage with the other stakeholders, to try to figure out what's needed? If they are going to be assessed on publications in the scholarly journals which are reviewed by the other faculty, so they are not bothered with respect to what the industry thinks. So that's one issue. So the relevance of the faculty is important. And similarly, the curriculum, to what extent is the curriculum relevant? And relevant doesn't mean that what we as faculty think is relevant. Relevant means that to what extent do we involve outsiders, the other stakeholders, to decide what should be in the curriculum and what should not be there. And my own experience of 35 years indicates that we only do lip service to this. Very few times will we do this more in our executive education, by the way, at LUMS. So when we do an executive education, we'll go and talk to people and tailor the program. But when we put together a mainstream program, we don't do, and I've been telling this to my colleagues, that maybe the incentives are not aligned that way. So again, we don't do enough in terms of engaging the people who are really going to be benefited from this. And of course, the linkages are there, but they are not real linkages. I mean, they are just there to indicate that, okay, we have MOUs, just as a sermon. And then, of course, who are we going to be reaching out to? Which industries, which students, which partnerships? And each institution has to pick, given the situation, given the context. And most of the time, this question is not even asked. We go with the standard formula that, okay, we'll attract so many students and we'll have so much revenue, and things basically end up. Very few institutions think about reach. And then the third is very important, respect. You have to respect the other stakeholders in order to be meaningful to them. Do we respect the students to really listen to them about their issues, about their concerns? Do we care for them? Similarly, employers and society. Business schools, I think it has been established, especially in a country like Pakistan, have probably the most significant impact on society in terms of the norm, because people go into all sorts of areas and they end up in very responsible positions. To what extent are we concerned about instilling those values and those norms which will define our society in the future? This is a problem in the West, but I think we also have this problem. Can we go to the next slide, please? So this is, I just share some data from the work that I did. It's a little dated, but I haven't had time to update this, but I don't think things would have changed much. So we studied 20 plus institutions across the country, and we looked at these 5-6 things. We looked at what is the overall philosophy and focus of the program. I mean, just to give you an idea, NUST was included, FAST was included, IBA, and so on, across the country. And then we asked questions, what is the role of the industry and community in these 4 different and important aspects of the institution? One is, to what extent are they really involved in the governance and strategic decision making? And in almost all cases, people were on the governing boards, but the actual participation of outsiders was negligible. They would not either show up, or when they show up, they just go through the motion. They'll not really encourage or provide serious input. The second was, when it comes to curriculum design and development of the actual content, things were again not too great, although different institutions had taken some ad hoc steps, but it was again a weak area. And then the teaching and the learning process, this notion of bringing in industry people to co-teach or contribute. This was there here and there, but not as a part of an overall strategic decision. Mentoring, coaching, and career guidance was something somewhat more popular, because institutions would like the industry to come in before the student graduates to guide the students in terms of what type of jobs are there to prepare them. But again, this guidance came somewhat quite late. It was not there at the beginning when the student was making a decision in terms of which program to join. And we also had a question on what is the role of alumni, because alumni can actually cover all of these aspects. They represent the society, they represent the industry. To what extent are the institutions taking advantage of the alumni networks? the interesting thing which came out was that some form of linkages were there. And there was something unique which was being done in each of these 20 plus institutions. There's something to learn from each one of those. But the active engagement with community was missing in almost all the institutions, except one, which was NUST at that time. I think it has probably, this area has probably improved now. And the mechanisms for all these linkages were primarily informal. So a faculty member is interested, he would do that, and then you'll go back to your regular routine if somebody else comes in. Can we go to the next slide, please? So we asked the industry as to how their perception is, and we asked each of these institutions as to what is. So here we have the data. The industry, leveraging industry and community resources to make university more relevant. So the industry felt the average was more like 3-ish, and when we asked the academics, the average came out to about 6, but they were all over the place. Some people had the opinion almost 7.5. They were very happy with the way they were engaging. And there were a few more realistic people who felt that it was close to what the industry felt. But by and large, people felt that, okay, they are doing a better job than what the industry perceived it to be. Next slide, please. This was another aspect, and again, similar. So we are looking at different aspects, different questions. Can we go to the next slide? Now, in terms of the designing of the programs and curricula, here again, the industry felt on a scale of 1 to 10, 3, and the academics felt that, okay, it was more close to 6. Because when you ask somebody to show up in your academic council, we think that we have taken input from the industry. But that's too late in the day. We have already decided, and most of the time people will go along with this or give mind. When we start thinking about something, that's the time that industry should be actively engaged, and very few institutions do that. Can we go on? Next slide. Now, placement was interesting. Here, the industry was a little more positive. They felt on a scale of 1 to 10, 4.5. And similarly, I think the university's perception was still 6. Next slide, please. So if you look at these 3 dimensions, in terms of the strategic plan, there's a big difference, 6 and 3. If you look at the resources for designing the program, 6 and 3, and in terms of mentoring, coaching, 6 and 4.5. So that divide is there. It may have improved, this is a little dated, I think people will become more aware of this. Let's move on, next slide. So there are some questions to be asked. So I'm going to take a few steps back and try to see what is the core reason why we are in this situation. The questions are, these are again coming from that study, and I agree with most of these things. One is that we are operating in an environment where we have immediate issues in terms of placement. We have to place students where we are. So we have to be aware of the local requirements. But most of the industry, so if Fahim's institution is in Gujranwala, quite a few of the employers have linkages in the export world. So those employers have to fulfill many of the requirements which are global in terms of compliance. So our student has to be tuned in with some of the global perspectives, like environment and sustainability, increasingly so. So you have to make sure that you bring in both of those dimensions. The second thing is the relevance aspect is not what it should be, as we've already talked about. People are too content with doing things the way they are. They're not trying to disrupt anything. I've yet to see, there are 1 or 2 examples which have been talked about, but I've yet to see the results, where people are really thinking out of the box and coming up with a totally new way of offering what's needed. And then we have another problem, and it is a real problem. Although I am at the NBEAC accreditation forum, actually accreditation and rankings have many advantages, but they also become a huge problem. And I'll tell you why they become a huge problem. Because now you start looking at checklists. You start ignoring the real essence. You stop asking the real question, and I'll come to those questions. So if it is used that way, then this could be a huge benefit. But if the end objective is only to get that piece of paper or to have that logo on your website, then it could actually cause damage. And I've seen that damage take place. So we have to make sure that first we clear what we want to be. And then we use accreditation and rankings as a vehicle. So this is not an end purpose. End purpose has to be defined, and then these are the means through which you can definitely, it will help you get there. But I'll talk more about it in a while. And then, of course, this values aspect, which keeps coming up, is quite missing from our curriculum. What is it that we want to see in our society, and how are we going to develop people who are going to uphold those values? We only do lip service to this, and that's very unfortunate. And then, of course, there's a notion of theories, the books and texts, and we more or less go with that. We don't see what's actually happening in the real world and try to bring those things into the class, or try to bridge the gap between what the theory is. And this is a problem in management. All the new developments in management, none of them has come from the academics, by the way. None of them. All of those, whether it's the quality revolution, whether it is the modeling revolution, whether it's the analytics revolution, all of those things, whether it's the e-commerce revolution, all of those things and the frameworks predominantly have come from the industry. And the academics have been caught just trying to play up and meet the requirements and expectations. So we have not led as academics. And this is something which one has to think about. Wait a bit. And of course, ethics and personal development aspect, because especially at the undergraduate level, that's a major responsibility, that how you are shaping the individual's personality, to what extent are we focused on providing those opportunities to the individuals. And of course, innovation and entrepreneurship is a buzzword these days. But to what extent is it embedded in our program? Or do we have an innovation center or an NIC in our university which operates independently, and none of the faculty member ever engages with that NIC? So our programs go on the way they are, and we don't encourage initiative in our own classrooms. So we are not promoting entrepreneurship, at least not to our own students. Maybe outsiders, the non-degree people will benefit from that, but our degree holders will probably still be stuck in the old framework. So that's another issue. Next slide, please. So they, in that study, they talk about this need to use this term, which is very popular these days, open innovation, as a vehicle to address these issues. And the basic concept is that you enhance innovation or new ideas by opening to external stakeholders, suppliers, partners, customers, and in our case, this would mean the institutions that are developing the individuals who come to us, high schools, or colleges from these people are coming in. To what extent are we engaged with them? To what extent are we engaged with the employers and the people who develop the curricula, the textbooks? So, and how are we leveraging their ideas to shape our curriculum and our focus? So this is something. And the key thing is that you need to have, I'm fond of P's, so I'll talk about more about P's. So there are 3 P's that they talk about. You need to make sure that you involve the right people in this whole process, people across the spectrum in terms of their industry, in terms of the academics, in terms of the students also, and take their input. And then you focus on some problems. You cannot exist in a generic way as a business school. You have to exist to serve a specific purpose. So wherever we are, we need to be aware of what is it that's happening in the industry, in our society, for which we'll be primarily gearing up our program for. And then, of course, you need to make sure that you have a process through which you can engage with these people and bring in these ideas and then leverage them in developing your program. And then, of course, you need to have a lot of input to make sure that you don't miss out on any opportunity. So just talking to 3 people from the industry and 2 faculty members to design a new program is just not good enough. You are going to definitely miss out some of the key requirements for that program. Next slide, please. So the issue is, and this is again common debate which has been going on, there is this notion of teaching versus research. And Dr. Fahim has very directly mentioned this. I have a very different view on this. I think if you are not doing some scholarly work, you cannot be an effective teacher. It's not required that you should be publishing in the top journals, but you should be developing something new, some new insights. Otherwise, you will be just delivering what you have been delivering for the last 10 years. So as long as you are developing something new, you will be effective. So you can redefine research, but some level of research has to be there. The second question is applied versus theoretical, and this is again, applied will only come in if you engage with the people who are involved in the practice of management. That means going out. how much time do we give to our faculty to go outside the business school? Hardly any. So recently, I will not mention the name, one of my former students who's engaged with another business school, so he was making a visit to Gwadar for one of his research projects, and I encouraged him. I said, why don't you take some of the colleagues from that business school along with you? He said not even one of them was interested. Everything was arranged because they don't have time. They're teaching and other things are not, they're not interested. So again, our systems are such that we don't encourage this. So that's another problem. And then this notion of to what extent experiential, do we try, do we experiment, do we try new things, or we are stuck with whether case method. A lot of people think case method is history. So we still talk about case studies and case method. Have we brought in any innovation in terms of, I mean, there are all sorts of cases. There are live cases, there are video cases, all sorts of, but we have yet to even discover many of those new pedagogical tools. And of course, whether we talk about broad issues and then focus on specific aspects which relate to my course or my topic, or do we stay stuck in our narrow area without even being aware of how it's applied to address the bigger issues? So this notion of specialization versus integration, this is a tension which is going on, and I already talked about it. Now, they talk about in this study this notion of how the software industry has evolved. It's a very interesting analogy. Software industry started by offering products. They moved on to looking at those products as a service. So they say you don't pay for it, you only pay for it as you use it. And now they're talking about platforms. And platform means that, okay, we'll give you a system or a structure or an ecosystem where different people will contribute different bits and you get to use what you can have. Which means that, okay, now you're going to be open to innovation. So maybe business schools can think about becoming platforms rather than stuck on products like the BBA. They could offer a whole combination of things and facilitate different people to offer various components of what's needed and cater to different markets. And for this, what's proposed here is that you have what they call partner-based learning and research. So joint program development with industry. And again, I independently have been thinking about this, although this study is also you need to think about if you are in Karachi or if you are in Gujranwala or if you are in Sialkot or Chichongi Malian or Hafzabad or GB or wherever. You think about who is going to be your target industry. You develop a consortium, engage with those people and develop programs jointly with them. Jointly means that they help define the content. They help you deliver part of that curriculum. And they also give you the flexibility that the curriculum evolves as the program is executed. Because when you do new things, you can never anticipate all the requirements. So what they're proposing is you design the program in such a way that once you are in the program, say after 1 or 2 terms, you will discover new things that you have to introduce. So you bring in changes on the fly so that you stay current with the actual evolving situation. Next slide. Ji. So the core questions are, what is the value that we provide to the stakeholders? So do we talk about this? Do we ask this question? What is the value that we give to the student? What is the value that we give to the employer and to the society and the world? I think this is a question which has to be part of a regular discussion and debate when the faculty gets together. And then you talk about how do we deliver this value by offering something different in terms of the pedagogy. And then it will naturally evolve. If you are trying to deliver a certain value, you'll have to tailor your pedagogy in order to deliver that. And then, of course, the research contributions have to be in line with what you are trying to do. I mean, there's a rat race of A-level publication, which is great, by the way. I'm not against that. But once you have had your initial set of A-level publication, you established your academic credentials, I always encourage my colleagues, now you start looking at practical issues. Maybe after 5, 6 years, you should not be concerned about, so once you have had your 6, 7 A's, that's good enough. Now you start looking at practical applications and shift towards creating an impact. And that impact has to be distinctive. And I tell my young colleagues, and it's a lot of young people here, the question you should be asked, after 10 years after my PhD, which is an area where I could say that, okay, because of my contribution, a certain industry or a certain company has been able to do something which they would not have been able to do otherwise. this is the question to ask. Not that, okay, I will have X impact factor. That's fine for the first 6 years. But after 10 years, the question should change. Next. So what could be done? I mean, I'm wrapping up. You need to engage with the stakeholders in a decision-making, governance, program design, so you make sure that they are there throughout the whole process. And for this, you need to set up formal mechanisms, not ad hoc mechanisms, so they are built into the system. Must have a focus on tackling the core issues of today. So if my industry is concerned about environmental issues, quality issues, my program should reflect content and pedagogical tools related to that. And there are 7 P's which in my view are important. You can think of other P's. The first is people. I need to be very clear. Who are the people that are going to be part of this in terms of the students, in terms of the faculty, in terms of the employers? You need to understand and get the best possible people available to you. Then philosophy. What will be the core philosophy that I'll have? And it's not one philosophy. You can decide for yourself, but you must have something which holds everything together. And then, of course, what is the purpose? What will I try to do? I mean, you can call it mission or whatever. I prefer more sort of run-of-the-mill terms which everybody can relate to. And then processes. What processes will I have to be able to make progress in that direction? And what provisions or resources will I need? Do I have the resources to do all these things? And where will those resources come from? And of course, which partnerships will I need? And how will I assess progress or impact in terms of having made progress in that direction? So these are next year. I think I'm done. Thank you, Ji, for your patience, and we'll take questions.